This is Peter York.
And this is Michael Pierce.
And you're watching Seattle Wireless TV.
Welcome to this month's episode of Seattle Wireless TV. In this show, Drew from WiFiMaps.com talks to David Luce from Telerama
and Jason Levitt from LessNetworks.com presenting information on how Austin City Wireless beat T-Mobile.
Enjoy the show.
Hi, this is Drew from Jodag with another segment for Seattle Wireless TV. This time around, we've got Doug Luce from Telerama. Telerama is the world's third ISP, and being on the cutting edge, they're also a provider of local hotspots. They've got a cost-effective model using some surprising techniques. We've got Doug here to give us the rundown.
Yeah, I want you to unpackage one of these dudes. Give you the full tour. These things, you ever heard of these?
No, what are they?
Hawking makes these. These are these wonderful 10100 switches. They're little 8-port mini unmanaged switches. 200 meg, yeah, full duplex, half duplex. The cool thing, every port is an auto crossover port, which is way handy. Sounds silly, but it's really useful. Yep, these things, I think we're still buying them for about 80 bucks. The APs we're buying for 60 bucks. What else we got? Yeah, I'll tell you about this. So, since the ATM cluster was out of the question, the ATM clustering architecture was out of the question, we had to move to the one box per site. And so, you know, what do you need in a router on the sites? Well, we could see, just by going in the back room with Starbucks, somebody worked there, what they're using, what T-Mobile or Mobilestar was using at that time. For their own stuff, and it was fairly expensive. You know, Nokia access controllers, fairly expensive stuff. I estimated they spent $4,000 to $5,000 per site in equipment alone for these T-Mobile, these Starbucks sites. Mobilestar did. I was like, there's no way, you know, there's no way that you can build a sustainable model on equipment that expensive, because the amortization costs will just kill you. So we sat down and sort of decided what was necessary in order to provide a decent service. So number one, customer expectations right now, DSL level. You don't need to provide T1s to people. DSL has the downside of a slow uplink, slow transmit rate, but most people consume. And those people who do upload can deal with it anyway. They tend to be a little bit higher end users. Most people are looking to consume, and you know, half a T of bandwidth, 768, which is our standard for the wireless sites, it's all you need. And in order to switch that to a AP, you don't need a real high-end router. You know, you don't need to buy even the lowest end Cisco. But what we did want a good bit of flexibility at the sites. So what we ended up choosing was a Linux platform, and we wanted to use an OpenBSD platform. We're BSD centric here, but Linux is a fine operating system and allowed us to do everything we needed to. So, in terms of software, the Linux operating system contains a full-fledged routing protocol. Everything you need to do traditional standard routing. On top of that, of course, we needed to have the captive portal system, the software that grabs your CNN session and sends it over to us. So we wrote up a whole system for it, Mac layer system, very nice, very robust system for doing that capturing. Had a couple flaws with it though, and we looked at that and decided we really don't want to be in the software business if we can all avoid it. The core competency we want to build here is service, being able to service places. That means we had to find our software elsewhere, and we looked at several options. The one we settled on was NoCat, the NoCat Auth, and it turns out to be a very nice system. There's lots of people maintaining it, lots of people using it. It does everything we need it to do. Old Y cables. Yeah, so here's our assembly. There we go. We've got 3 components that go out to the sites, the individual wireless sites. Whoops. This, of course, is the transmission, the RF hardware. We're using just straight off-the-shelf Linksys WAP11s plus WSB24s. These are signal boosters. That gives us close to 1 watt. I don't know if we ever really measured this, but close to sort of what the FCC allows us to do, the FCC maximum. A very nice transmission set. Of course, it handles all the AP functions, so it takes care of your session management, association, dissociation. Gives us statistics, lets us know when somebody associates to it. We can reboot the thing via SNMP remotely. Very cool. Another component we use, PoE, D-Link's off-the-shelf PoE components here. Spend $40 on those guys. We have a little hack that we came up with. This Y cable, which lets us power both of these devices off of here. Very crucial.
It just comes with a 1-to-1 end cable.
Yeah, and it's only designed to power one thing, but it does great with two. That's cool because it lets us put these anywhere without having to worry about where the power is. We just bring the power along the Ethernet. Very cool. This thing comes back to a routing engine. These are 3 of the devices we use for routing on site, and if they're familiar, they might have come off your desk from '97 or something. We buy these things by the pallet load. They are just desktop PCs, all they are, or tower, I guess, tower PCs. Things that were decommissioned from corporate America, things that were brand new, 96, 97 time frame. I think our current standard is Pentium 2 350, Pentium 2 300, 64 or 128 megabytes of RAM, 2 gigs of disk minimum, some have 4, some have 6. In the back, this one isn't configured, but this one has it. 3 Ethernet cards. 1, 2, 3. Yep, and these are, you know, Intel Ether Expresses, or I don't know. We've got a few other architectures we support, and of course it has power supply and case and VGA and serial port and USB ports, all the rest of that. USB ports are kind of crucial for our application. But these guys, as configured with all that stuff in it, oh, CD-ROM and floppy as well, $30 we buy for a piece, and you know, it's hard to beat that. For that, we get a very capable, full-blown Linux-based routing solution. At every site, we have a full-bore Linux box, which is fantastic because we can do so much with it. We run MRTG, of course, and a bunch of other very stock stuff, so we can do analysis of the sites. We have a nice system that lets us see what's going on. We can actually look at the wires and see the data going across it, which is great for doing user diagnostic and for doing statistical analysis of usage at the sites. Wonderful, wonderful thing. I guess we could also enter, I don't know how well it would do on SETI at home if we wanted all of them to start processing alien signals.
Extraterrestrial.
Yeah, pretty cool. I was so worried about doing this because I thought these things would be, you know, they're old, they'd be unreliable, we'd have to replace the things all the time. As it turns out, they're rock solid, they're wonderful. Compared to these things, which, you know, brand now out of the box, we have so many problems with brand new equipment. This old stuff just sits there and runs and runs and runs. It's wonderful. Very happy with it. And the software we have on there is great. We can actually, we've done bench tests where we power all 3 cards at 100 megabits per second, full bore, and we don't need anywhere near that in terms of power. $30, you can't beat that. There are some disadvantages, of course. Big thing is, it's a big thing. It's huge. It's a large device, and so we can't put it up on a ceiling or anything nice like that. We have to put it somewhere in the back room and extend it up. Hasn't been a huge problem, but we are looking to the next generation. And for us, the next generation, we don't have anything here yet, but it'll be the Socris platform. And it'll let us integrate all the things. It'll let us integrate this and this, so we'll only have a Socris box. And they're about yay big, small boxes, and the antennas. I didn't want to go that route because the Socris boxes are easily $300 in a full configuration with all the stuff necessary. But one of the line items we have to worry about is shipping. Since we're looking to bring this national, of course, and everywhere else, we're going to have to assemble these things and ship them out to sites. Well, I mean, it's expensive to overnight one of these guys. Compared to a Socris, you know, $70 difference, something like that. It's enough to make up the difference if we add all this equipment together compared to the Socris, include shipping.
But wait, there's more. Off-the-shelf techniques can be combined with proprietary and ad hoc engineering for a more complete solution.
We put a USB client on these guys, and the reason is that so we can analyze these things via SNMP to tell if they're working or not. we can ping it, you know, and we can do an SNMP get to see if the thing is active. We can look at their web. There's a web page on there. We can look at the web page. But if something happens with this guy, the RF piece, or the radio kicks out, or somebody does that to the antennas, we can't tell if it's broken or not. We can't tell if that happens. Not from the devices itself, or if somebody pulls these out. We can tell, however, through the USB client on this box here. So we actually have it associate back to here, send a packet all the way through out to where the internet is, all the way back, and we can actually tell on site when something's going down, when something has gone down or not. It's great. It also lets us monitor for rogue access points using our SSID. Also lets us know if there's any other traffic in the area that we should be concerned about. Things that are using our same channel, etc. We really haven't run into much of that, which is good. So yeah, that's what we have on site. And when we go up to Civil, we can take a look at the actual equipment they have down there. The other thing we added to these, yeah, let's go take a look here. It's sort of like an experimenter's relay board. You can see it's actually being powered off of the motherboard, powered off of one of the
power supply comes right out of the 12 volt, and there's a ground right there. We splice them.
Yeah, we splice with these nice Scotch locks. Yeah, nice cheap hack. We're all about cheap stuff around here, let me tell you. What it lets us do is remote reboot all the equipment on site through the relay board via Linux control, which is very handy too, because we do a lot of rebooting, especially the access points to get the thing working. So that sort of completes our architecture, our current architecture for all this stuff. We're going to try and squeeze all that functionality down into a Sophos board so we have the smaller form factor advantage of all this. It's just right for these guys. And with the addition of the relay board, the USB client, and the power over Ethernet, you know, it's the best solution I know of for on-site hotspot access, bar none. And we've looked at several of the vendor-supplied sort of hotspot-in-a-box systems. Nothing touches this in terms of functionality, which is great.
Then we went to Umi, just above Soba in Shadyside, for a look at one of their installations, and some great sashimi.
How's things here? They're pretty busy. It's tough to get a reservation at Umi. Gosh, what tonight? Oh, well, look at this.
Alright, much more fun to service the box now.
Yeah, so this is the liquor cabinet at Soba at Umi. And so, highly secure facility, obviously. And what's this?
Vodka.
Nice. Anyway, and you can see, there's our standard install. That's the edge box, as we call it. The router. This is not atypical for an install, a little messy, but all functional, of course. The DSL modem, the bits get pumped into the facility from outside. That connects right down to the box, which comes back up and feeds this hub, because this facility has 3 different access point assemblies. And yeah, I guess one of these hubs is fed from the DSL modem. Actually, one of these hubs goes to all the APs, the other hub feeds their office computers. All the sites that we install, we give a free connection to the office in the location. And then a nice DSL connection through the 3rd port in that edge box. So this is, you see dangling wires all over the place. It's yeah, pretty standard and highly functional. You know, it's very important to us to have production quality, production ready equipment, and that does the trick. Their office is back there, and they have the whole LAN set up there. And up here, on the west side of the facility. We're on this way. Yeah. Let's see. There's one access point here. And again, you know, we have a lot of flexibility because we use the power over Ethernet to shove these things anywhere. Oh, the reservoir. That's nice. It gets the bar all going.
Hi, how are you?
On the scale of things, this is actually one of our larger installations with 3 access points. Because most, you know, the average is 1. Sneak around here. We're being seated in here, I think. Nothing out of the wiring. Is it in there? Yeah, it's right down to the base. So this one's sited conveniently behind the bar. Yep, there we go. There's nothing particularly magic about the way we do this. We just find the very best location and stick it there. And again, minimum of wiring, minimum of fuss, trouble here, since the brains are all down in the basement. Just wire it back up to there. And when we come to maintain the thing, we've got all the liquor we need to keep us alive.
And what a great living it is. Check out one of Telerama's hotspots, coming soon to a location near you, and at telerama.com. This is Drew from Jodag for Seattle Wireless TV. Thanks for watching. Oh, and special thanks to Doug Luce.
Yeah, go ahead.
Alright, I'm going to be relying a little bit on the slides here. This is only the second formal presentation I've given. So, my name is Jason Levin. I'm a contractor for Les Networks LLC. And I'm here to tell you the story of how Les Networks helped the Austin Wireless City project beat T-Mobile in only 6 months. And I'm also going to tell you a little bit about Les Networks technology after I tell this story. So the players in our little saga, we've got Les Networks LLC, a tiny for-profit corporation that was established in March of 2003, and we provide technology, free Wi-Fi technology. Then the Austin Wireless City project, which is a nonprofit initiative of Austin Wireless. They're sort of a spin-off of the Austin Wireless user group. And they were created to help sort of define the quality of free Wi-Fi in Austin, to define the quality and the scope, really, of free Wi-Fi in Austin. And then you have T-Mobile, of course, the faithless mega corporation. We all know who they are. So we also know about the T-Mobile, Boingo, Wayport, your favorite mega corporation Wi-Fi provider here, Hotspot recipe. Of course, they partner with corporate retail venues. They stick their Wi-Fi hotspots in Starbucks and Kinko's and Borders and places like that. You always pay for Wi-Fi access, and most of the money that you spend at these places for Wi-Fi access leaves the community. Right? It goes to T-Mobile corporate, it goes to Starbucks, and maybe a little bit of it goes to the employees who live locally. So maybe a little bit of it, trickles down to the local community. So our recipe, or the Austin Wireless City Project's recipe, really is a little different, quite a bit different actually. In our recipe, the venues own their own equipment, their own access point and broadband connection. The network is, the venues, the hotspots at the venues are installed locally and they're supported locally. Wi-Fi access is always free, and the Les Networks hotspot server software, which is free as well, provides the sort of overall branding and the community networking that sort of ties everything together. And finally, of course, most of the money you spend stays local. You spend it at a local venue, although chains can also use this too, and we have gotten inquiries about that. But generally, it's local independent venues. The money stays in the community. Am I doing this right?
You go right.
Yeah, it's on the connect.
Let's see.
Did I accidentally press something?
You lost it. It's gone. Oh no!
Check it out the back. Technological breakdown here.
Stupid wires.
Little Bluetooth fart. Or whatever. So you see our two recipes there. Right? The mega corporation.
There you go.
Oh, there we go. Okay, the Austin Wireless City Project. They were established in October 2002, and the community stakeholders were identified: Austin Wireless Users Group, Austin Freenet, which is a group that installs internet access, free internet access in public libraries in Austin, and some schools and so forth. And EFF Austin, you probably heard of Electronic Frontier Foundation. And the Austin Wireless City Project realized that they needed a technology partner to help them put together these wireless hotspots and tie everything together. And of course, that's where Less Network comes in. So the phase 1 rollout was, they decided they're going to try to do 50 hotspots, and the head of Austin Wireless City Project, Richard McKinnon, also founded Less Networks in order to provide the technology. We get a, how did we do that?
I think Rob did it. You back there, Rob?
Hey, Rob, you gonna just stay back?
Oh, no, he got it working. Did you get it working?
All right, we're back with the pointer.
Back with the wireless.
One more try. If it fails,
Okay.
stay back there.
Blame AT&T.
And now it stopped working. You just tell me slide, and I'll slide.
All
Sorry
right.
about that.
Slide. This is gonna. Okay, this is gonna be a little bit shaky than I thought.
It worked really good in the demo.
Slide. All right, quick, very brief overview. We're going to go into this later, but a quick overview of Less Networks technology that we deploy in each venue. This is at Joe's Coffee House, right? You've got the wireless users, and you've got some access point, any access point. There's a Linksys there, but it could be just about any access point. An old PC, and a broadband connection. And of course, the old PC runs NoCat off and some other stuff, does the captured portal thing, which you guys know about, and uses Authenticate to our central server, which is down in a machine room in Austin. So that's sort of the basic idea there. Slide. Okay, and for our hotspot server, you can use old PCs, basically. I'll go into the requirements later, but one of the things that Austin Wireless City Project did was they partnered with Image Microsystems, and Image Microsystems recycles old PCs, and they reconfigure them with our software and provide them for very, very affordable prices. If there's not one available, I mean, basically you can pull an old Pentium 2 out of get it for next to nothing and use it, but. So that was another way of kind of like recycling, doing something environmentally friendly, community friendly. Slide. All right, this is an example of of our captured portal splash screen that you get when you log into a venue. You sit down in Joe's Coffee House, and usually that's Richard's dog, but normally it would be Joe's Coffee House splash screen. And it also shows one of our added, one of the things we did during the Austin South by Southwest Music Festival. We ran an iTunes proxy, and we're able to provide access to 600 local artists' recordings via our hotspots. So you can sit down at Joe's Coffee House, and you sit down with your laptop, and if you have iTunes on Mac OS X or iTunes on Windows, it saw an iTunes source, and you could just see the 600 artists, and it would, the proxy would invisibly redirect you to the actual source, it was actually in San Antonio. So this is an example, of the branding for the venue, and then something local, some community service that we were adding that was also free. And the interesting thing about that, the iTunes thing as well, is that T-Mobile was running T-Mobile and Starbucks were running a similar service with their Sony, I guess Starbucks, their Columbia Music catalog or something, and their artists. And so we sort of one-up them here by offering, all the local artists in Austin for free, at a free venue. Slide. Okay, so we started out in September 2003 in Austin. T-Mobile has 36 hotspots. Okay, and most of them are in Starbucks in Austin. And so the Austin Wireless City Project starts using our software in the beta test phase, and they begin build out, and they start going around to venues and say, hey, you want to offer free wireless, free Wi-Fi, and have a branded splash page, and blah blah blah. Slide. So the media, they love free Wi-Fi, right? And slide. So one of the early PR coups here was that Intel had their one unwired day where all their 4-pay hotspots, Starbucks mainly and places like that, were going to be free for one day to sort of introduce the public to Wi-Fi. And so we had our own $100 press release where we were pointing out that every day is free Wi-Fi day. Every day is unwired day in Austin, and it was picked up by MSNBC and a lot of media outlets, and we got a tremendous amount of coverage on that. Slide. And in November we got the top story. This is Richard, our CEO there. We got the top story in the Statesman, which is the local paper. Front page, top. Slide. And of course, news websites, telling the story as well. Slide. And this is one I just kind of crammed in there at the last minute because this just showed up. And this is the New York Times article, and that's Richard again, kind of squeezed in the corner.
I love the T-shirt.
Yeah. And this is really about the Austin Wireless City project because they're the spinoff of the local Austin Wireless user group who actually went out and they're deploying and supporting all the free hotspots in Austin. Slide. Of course, top rankings for free Wi-Fi on Google. Slide. So here's a quick little case study of how we got local businesses working, how the Austin Wireless City project got local businesses working together to provide free Wi-Fi. We had Opal Divines, a popular restaurant and bar in Austin that wanted free Wi-Fi. So Midas Networks did the cabling, and a small consultancy installed the router. Another company made some posters that said free Wi-Fi here. More food and beer was ordered from Opal's local suppliers. New Wi-Fi customers bought the food and beer and paid tips to wait staff. Less Networks, of course, that's us. Employs 10 people and contractors, and we provided the technology. Midas Networks hosts our central server, and they're a local ISP. And we had a corporate communications firm, Hacking Communications, local, who did the PR. So we had this sort of synergy of all these local businesses working together to sort of provide the solution at just one venue. And of course, we have a lot of venues now, as you'll see in a moment. Slide. Okay, so in just 6 months, from basically around August, September to the end of March, we now have, we exceeded 36, which was the number T-Mobile had. We had 37. And now we have about 45 venues, and we have 7,500 registered users. And we're doing about 4 per week, and we've got basically about 100 venues that want the Austin Wireless City project to go in and set up a free Wi-Fi network. And that includes city and state government, just lots of people want it. Slide. So basically, T-Mobile still at 36. They don't have anywhere to go, right? They partner with Starbucks. They're in every Starbucks in Austin. Maybe some, I'm not sure who else. Kinko's, the Borders, and that's it. They ran out of locations. Meanwhile, the Austin Wireless City project will provide the free Wi-Fi solution to anybody who's interested, any business, and so we're just growing. They're expanding like crazy. And we've also gotten some interest from. We met with Time Warner recently because Time Warner's looking at us and seeing, wow, lots of our customers are deploying this, and we don't have to support it. And it's free, and there's a lot of things they like about it. So they've been talking with us, and There's one in City Hall, and the city of Austin looked at this and said, "Wow, we can offer a hotspot, and it will be branded with the city of Austin, so everybody knows that we're providing it. We can get usage statistics on who's using it, and we don't have to support it, and we don't have to use our manpower really, and much technology to do so. So it's just a real kind of a win-win situation." Slide. So a little bit about what we were offering. Slide. Okay, this is the one. This is the slide we showed earlier. And let's see. I think you guys know what this is about here. So next slide, please. Okay, so the Less Hotspot server. This is some key stuff, and we've just released the software to the public. If you go to www.lessnetworks.com, you can download it for free. Our Less Networks Hotspot server is just an old PC or a new PC. It's running all GPL licensed open source software, and it's the component of the infrastructure that does the captured portal. It's running no-cat auth, so it it has the user login and provides the venue branding and any other services such as our iTunes proxy. It's running Red Hat 8 Linux. It has about 130 Linux RPMs running on it. Perl, obviously, no-cat auth gateway version 0.81, and a bunch of various custom Perl scripts. Probably our main innovation here, since a lot of stuff that is freely available, is that we provide this all in a single ISO file that you can burn onto a CD on any operating system. And that single CD, you just stick it into the PC, and if it's a El Torito format CD-ROM drive, which is basically any PC after 1995 or so, it'll just boot up and it'll reformat the hard drive with put Red Hat 8 Linux and all the stuff on it, and you just a little bit of configuration and instant hotspot. So very low maintenance, very easy to install if you've looked at what it requires to sort of put this together by hand, or even in other formats. It's a little bit more work, a little bit more maintenance. So, slide. Okay, the hotspot server requirements, I mentioned this before, very minimal. A Pentium 2 PC, 64 meg RAM, 500 meg hard drive, CD-ROM drive, 2 Ethernet ports. Very cheap. It might be that PC you've got sitting in the garage that you don't know what to do with. I've got one. Slide. Okay, our central server does not run no-cat, the no-cat authorization server side. We wrote our own stuff using Tomcat and Tapestry. However, we do use the exact same, I guess you would call it protocol or API. It's not really, I guess it's not formally specified, but the way the no-cat gateway communicates with the no-cat authentication server, we duplicate that. And that's a very important point, because if you use our hotspot server software for a hotspot, you download and use it, you don't have to authenticate to us. If you're running your own, you could conceivably run your own central server for authentication and use that. So we don't tie you into anything at all. And I think that's a really important point here for those who might be a little suspicious. Wow, if I run the Less Hotspot server software, I'll have to be tied to Less. That's not true. And we've actually proven that. We've changed the configuration in the no-cat auth gateway, and it authenticated to somebody else. So there you go. So anyway, our central server, which we like and we hope you want to play with us, has our database of registered users, and all users at a Less branded venue register with their email address, basically. And we provide network-wide venue branding from this server, the user authentication, and we provide this sort of community network stuff, which we'll talk about in a minute. So, central server, again, it's running Red Hat 9 Linux, Apache, MySQL. We're using the Postnuke content management system, and of course, more Perl. slide. So this is what happens. If you come to a less branded venue, you log in, or you register if you haven't registered already. You log in, you're authenticated by the central server. If it succeeds, you're redirected to the venue's website usually.
Sorry.
What's that about, Rob? Okay, is that your cell phone? Okay, if you're successful, you're redirected to the venue's website. You're also sort of behind the scenes simultaneously logged into the Postnuke site, and the idea is that you then appear on the venue-wide, the network-wide community software features. So if you're at a less branded venue in Bozeman, Montana, and you're logged in there, you'll see, if you go to our Postnuke site, you'll see that you'll see the other people logged in at less venues in Austin or London or wherever. So that's sort of one of the key added values. Slide. So we have a few Postnuke-based features. We have discussion forums and obviously Wi-Fi articles and news. We have a little network internet messaging system. And we have some venue-to-venue chat capability. So we don't show where the user is logged in because we don't want to encourage stalking. But you do see that, yes, Matt is logged in, but you don't know that where he's logged in at. Slide. So how do we make money? We give everything away. We don't require that you authenticate with us. How do we make money? Well, we don't at the moment. But we're researching the possibilities. And the obvious one is we have this database of registered users. And there might be an optional higher level service that we could provide at some point or partner with somebody and offer for a price. Of course, Wi-Fi access is always free, but there might be some other higher level service. Who knows what that might be? I don't know.
Stalking potential.
Right, stalking. There you go, the stalking server. So another possibility, of course, is to sell little community content ads on the splash page. Like where that iTunes thing was, maybe there'll be something there. And of course, we're open to partners. Any ideas? So, slide. You can create your own Less Networks venue, and it's really easy. Download the free software from SourceForge via our site. Burn it onto a CD-ROM. It's real easy. You can use Toast or Rendezvous, or not Rendezvous. It's a whole bunch of different Nero, anything. Burn it and just like that. Burn the CD. You get free authentication and branding from Less Networks, and you purchase broadband from your local friendly ILEC CLEC. And you can just go, if you're somewhere in the middle of Kansas and you want to have free Wi-Fi at the coffee house and you want to offer the coffee house an interesting way to offer it, a way that provides them a little more than just sort of an invisible free network. You can get an old PC and say, hey, become part of Less Networks network of community free Wi-Fi venues, and presto. So, slide. So the idea that we'd like to duplicate is the way it was in Austin, and that was have a community user group like Personal Telco Project, Austin Wireless City Project, Seattle Wireless. Have a wireless user group behind this, and have them go out and want to create free Wi-Fi in their community. And they would become the support system for the network. And in Austin, the Austin Wireless City Project is actually putting together their policies and their procedures, operating procedures and so forth, that they're going to make available for other wireless user groups if they want to go out and do this in their community. And of course, you can get our software for free at lessnetworks.com. Slide. So that's the end of the presentation. One more thing I wanted to add that's not in the slide presentation is that one of the efficiency that we've added that's not explained here is that once you download our software and you install it on a PC at a venue, you can then, it will provide you with an ID. You can then go to lessnetworks.com to a certain URL. You can log in, and you'll have, each venue will have has its own page where you can configure certain things. You can upload your splash graphics. You can configure how you want it to look somewhat and what the branding will be. And venues are able to change that at any time. So for instance, if you're a coffee house, you can, each morning you could go to our site using the web form and change what's on your splash page if you wanted to say, have it in your menu display every day, a different menu. So it's possible for you to get some mileage out of that with your customers. And it's also very low maintenance since we are maintaining all that information on our central server and not on the Hotspot server. So it's all up there. So the Hotspot server could be blown away. You just reinstall it, and the information, all the venue-specific information is grabbed from the central server again, which makes maintenance very easy and not so brittle for the local hotspot. Any questions?
Do you manage the IP space between venues? Do you reuse private IPs, or are you making an actual network of hotspots?
Do we reuse private IPs?
I mean, like I noticed your chat, for example. I was wondering how that worked between venues. Are you using a single IP space and then allocating that out between your venues, or are you just setting up network translation?
I don't know exactly.
Okay, I was just curious.
But that's a very good question. I'm thinking that what we do, I don't think that is,
is that part of the Postnuke process?
Yeah, it is part of the Postnuke. The users are maintained by Postnuke.
Got it.
And not by a network service per se. So in order for that to work, actually, I think in order for that to work, the users have to be at the Postnuke site, which is less interesting, obviously. But I have to check on that to be sure, but I'm pretty sure that's the case. So at the moment, we don't have a lot. We don't have like robust, person-to-person stuff available.
Yeah, I was curious about what the interaction was. Primarily just chat, as far as among users, right? As opposed to file exchange or whatever other else they want to have talk or speech.
What's the question? You want to know
what other your chat format is strictly text, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. The community-wide features is still. I mean, we haven't had a lot of time to focus on that. Because we've really worked very heavily on the management aspect, because we really want to make it easy for people to install it and then maintain it. That's something we've heard is a big problem. Is that once if you set up a hotspot with some other systems, and if something happens with the hotspot, it's a big hassle. You have to go to get it. You have to basically there's too much important information at the hotspot at the gateway level. So we're trying to make that easy to manage and let the people who own the hotspot manage it without us having to do anything too. Yeah.
You just have a single modifiable splash page initially by the.
Yeah, but you can redirect it to your own website.
Okay.
So if you're Joe's Coffee House, once people log in, the first thing you can redirect them to the the Joe's Coffee House website. So you can do that. You can have further stuff there if you want.
I'm curious, you've installed it at a bunch of venues. I know that one complaint about free wireless that I hear from some places around here is that they'll, especially at a cafe, they'll end up with a user who comes in, orders a cup of coffee, and sits there all day. Do you encounter those kind of complaints? If you do, how do you deal with them?
Well, we wouldn't be the people who would get those complaints.
Yeah.
But you're saying people who are sort of like sticky but not buying?
Yeah, exactly. I've been telling them to just to walk up to them and say, hey, you should really buy something.
Well, I haven't heard that as a problem actually.
Yeah.
But my guess is either the venues crack down, like you say, they go over and say, you need to buy something. In fact, I went to a venue here, Maris Cafe or something, is that what it's called? And the minute I walked in, I said, do you have free Wi-Fi? And he says, yes, for paying customers. So he was like real upfront about that. We have some venues in Austin that I think should have free Wi-Fi, but they don't think it's a good economic model for them because they're not the kind of place that has a lot of empty seats ever. So they think, well, I don't want people sitting around for 2 hours when there might be people waiting, to come in and buy a meal or whatever. So, some venues don't think it's a good idea. Yeah.
Yeah, sort of follow up on that. So it sounds like you're doing some level of user tracking data, and I'm assuming that's coming back to your central data source. So if I were the venue operator, do I have access to some of that information to say, okay, I've had 10 people connected from the hours of 10 and 2?
Well, that's another valuable.
Because if I were the business owner, then I could go back and look at my hourly sales and say, there is value or not in having this thing running.
Yeah, we don't identify the names of users.
No, I'm not asking that, but if I were the business owner, I'd want to know how many people were connected, and then I can go back and look at my point of sale data.
Right. You can see how many people connect, how many unique people, right? How many people are coming back, right? How long they're staying, that kind of thing. So that's also another valuable thing that we offer.
So you do offer that?
Yeah, I have to ask our CTO specifically what we're doing with that.
So like what layers of granularity you actually offer?
Yeah, because at the moment it's one of those things that's kind of like a second phase rollout in terms of making it.
Well, and it's potentially a value-added service, right? So.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah, Rob.
I was curious. Using NoCat off, do all of your users log in, or do you allow the general public to also log in? I mean, are they all registered NoCat users?
Everybody. You can register at the Postnuke community site, but that doesn't do anything for you on the network. You have to be registered through our central server, which of course does not run the NoCat authorization side, but uses the same protocol.
So in order to make use of one of the free Wi-Fi hotspots, you first register with less networks, and then you have access to all of them?
Yes, just like T-Mobile.
Got it.
It's the same thing, and that's part of the idea is that T-Mobile is going in, and they're the general public doesn't know that much about wireless, but they see T-Mobile. They have big flashy signs. They're in every Starbucks. They have nice leaflets. They have splashy advertising in various places. So they're providing this brand, reliability, partners with big places. So we want to do the same for free Wi-Fi, right? Less networks, reliability, partners, we're here. Instead of like, oh, maybe they have free wireless, but we don't know. So that's part of the thing. And really, I should stress that we're a philosophy-driven company. And if we don't make a dime, but everybody believes that Wi-Fi should be free, that Wi-Fi access should be free, we've succeeded. So if somebody could come and compete with us, they'll have to offer free Wi-Fi access, and that's great. We've succeeded. It works. So that's part of the part of the idea.
So logistically, as a user, if I show up at a hotspot, first thing I see is a splash page that says, "Oh, you're not a member. You should go here and go become a LS Networks member."
Yeah, it says on the splash page.
Go with the dog.
It's just like Hotmail or something. You
Yeah,
register, right? So.
Do you have any figures as to how much increase in patronage sites get after they've installed?
I don't have that. I don't know if we had that statistic on the one little graph or not.
Yeah, because that would seem to be like the most important thing for the business owner to say, okay, so I'm going to do this. What's the payout?
Right. Well, if you go to Austin, which actually had a lot of free Wi-Fi before we started doing anything, but there you see the power of the brand. It's like people read it in the Statesman. They go, free Wi-Fi in my venue? I didn't know that. This is good, and they go and get it, right? So the brand works, even though it might be cheap and obvious, and that's a kind of marketing proposition that's very valuable. But there was a lot of coffee houses that had free wireless, and some still do. They're just like independents, and that's great. And they're crowded, and the venues that we're supporting are crowded, and the answer is I don't know specifics. I would have to ask Richard. He might know something about that.
Yeah, because I think that would be interesting data to see, because it really goes back to that whole point of sale question, which is how many Wi-Fi users equates to how much increase in sales.
Yeah, it would be interesting to see if there was an increase in sales.
And the answer is it might not be, or it's there may be other intangibles, right?
Well, one assumes, since we haven't had a single venue back out, and I don't know of any venue in Austin that has backed out of free wireless, even though there's now 3 times as many as there were a year ago. So we don't know. Does that mean they're increasing sales, or does that mean they feel they have to compete with that? Don't know yet. But that's very interesting. I have to look at that.
There was a bit of noise about the AMD hotspot.
Oh yeah.
Austin. Do you care to elaborate on that?
Gosh, Rich would be better at talking about that one than I did. But I believe, and I'm not totally certain about that, but I believe the issue was that AMD was going around sticking those stickers, and I think I saw one in Seattle actually.
Yeah, there's a few out here.
Yeah, what do they say? They say AMD.
It says AMD hotspot, and it's got like a picture of somebody with a laptop.
Right. And of course, they had nothing to do with the hotspot.
Well, the signage was free.
Yeah, I mean, like when I've talked to, there was a Wi-Fi Net News article, and you talk to somebody in Austin, and you talk to Paige at Orifice.
Yeah, we called some of the venues listed, like in Chicago and Austin and Seattle, and some of them had said they wanted to be listed, and some had not. But Austin seems to be the only place where they're actually actively stickering without the venues being aware that the stickers are being put up.
Yeah.
It's sort of interesting.
Right.
But you know what? Actually, I went to the AMD. They do have a web page for it, even though it's not supposedly officially launched, and they haven't really done anything for the venues yet. And the Austin locations that were listed where the owners said didn't want to be in it were all gone. So they did pull down
there was a
ton
meeting.
of Austin locations.
There was a meeting with a bunch of people from AMD, because AMD has a huge facility in Austin, and I think the issues were cleared up, at least locally.
Supposedly they want to do something for the venue, which is great if they want to give something away, but they haven't really made that clear. They started listing before they told anybody what's going on.
Yeah, how did they end up on these?
Well, Paige was just kind of like, hey, the more people that know about it, the better it is for selling coffee. Right? All she's concerned about is selling coffee.
They had a boiler room. They had people make like 1,000 phone calls, I think. They like harvested every list of free hotspots and just called and said, can we send you a sign and some collateral material?
Right.
And some people said yes, and some said no. That's what's funny. So there's nothing. I don't think there's been any follow up with the venues yet.
There's not people like walking around just like
maybe in Austin.
Yeah.
Well, if they have a large presence there.
Some over-eager PR person,
Yeah. Questions?
What if a server goes down? Can no one authenticate? Has that ever happened?
It has happened, and currently, if the central server goes down, no one can authenticate.
No one can.
We're considering changing it so that if the central server goes down, free access just passes through. So you just suddenly you
So
don't
just
it's
everyone's-
free without authenticating.
Yeah.
But at the moment, it is a single point of failure.
And the second question I have is, you have all these splash pages that individual people can customize. For example, they would want like a link if they're not a registered to less networks. Do you sort of have some guidelines for what they can and cannot put on their splash page? I mean,
I don't believe we do at the moment because no one has done anything. No one's wanted to do anything unusual, and we're like very friendly about this kind of stuff because we don't.
No, I mean just for a practical sense, right? I mean, it'd be nice if they at least like have like your logo, or if people wanted to log in, they wouldn't even know to go to your website, right? I mean, it'd be nice to just have some sort of practical things, or if you want to run your own ads, right?
Well, we run remember that the captured portal is generated via Tapestry from the central server.
Right.
So they can't really, if they're using our central server to authenticate, we can't really keep them from doing stuff with the Hotspot server, obviously. I mean, it's...
Yeah.
But if they're authenticating to us, it's going to have a certain... There's going to be imposed by that certain guidelines.
Okay.
And we've talked internally a lot about what we're going to do, what kind of limitations we want to impose, like what if somebody wants to charge money for access?
Right.
We're kind of thinking that if they authenticate with us, they must Wi-Fi access must be free. They could charge the venue a support cost. They could say, well, we're going to charge the venue $20 a month for us to support the hotspot for them. Maybe we come in and do changes, or if something goes wrong. There's things like that. So yeah, we've thought about all the possible things people can do besides just downloading the hotspot and authenticating to something else.
Because, I mean,
they're gone.
But people could easily make cash off your network. Just use your back end for the authentication, and then sell their own managed services or do whatever, right? And you wouldn't have any way to prevent that.
Well,
we can keep customizing their page, and they can.
Yeah. Well, we can keep them from authenticating to our server, obviously.
Right. Okay.
So if they're part of less networks, there's going to be some guidelines. But we do want to be very open to other business models.
Right.
Like I suggest somebody might want to charge for support or installation or things like that. So yeah, it's a very interesting question. There's a lot of possibilities, and of course we're going to find out soon, hopefully, what happens, because we've just made the stuff available publicly. Any other questions? Yeah.
If you want to do content filtering right out of the blackout forward sites, does it happen on the hotspot server? You have to set it up there, or would you anticipate you doing that at your end, or what?
That's a good question. You could do it on the hotspot server, obviously, since it sits between the access point and the broadband connection.
Yeah, so I mean, what kind of defaults do you put in that distro? I mean, do you block things like port 25 so that people don't do drive-by spamming, or turn off the peer-to-peer networks to keep the venue owner from getting a nasty gram from the RAA, or or whatever whatever. Right?
I don't think there's any filtering of any kind. That hasn't been something that we've had to deal with at this point.
Well, yeah.
I don't know that we would be responsible for that, actually.
No, but what I could certainly see the business owner saying, well, I downloaded your software and people did something stupid. How do I turn things off?
Yeah.
Right. Or I expected you to turn those, the obvious ones off.
Yeah, I'm not actually sure. I think the Red Hat 8 installation pretty much locks down the Linux. I mean, it's a very, very, very bare bones Linux.
Right. But if somebody lives above the coffee shop with a Kazaa box.
Well, you mean, but then it wouldn't matter if we were there at all, right? I mean, they
right,
yeah.
Right. But I mean, if the cafe owner has a small assumption that you're going to handle that sort of thing for you.
Yeah, that would generally be handled by who's ever supporting the venue, which would be the Austin Wireless City project.
Excellent.
And is.
Okay.
We are not a support group in general, except for our technology.
No, but I think it probably would be useful to make some decisions about, well, these are the default things we turn off because.
Or allow them.
Or allow because, yeah, right.
I guess that's the question. How deep would you get into helping anybody?
Wait a minute, I just want to mention one thing. Since people can use any access point they want, that's going to be definitely a local configuration issue, because that's how the access point is configured, right?
Well, it's how the gateway is configured, right? So they've got an access point, and then they have a less networks box, and then they have the internet.
Okay.
Well, so the access point's just bridging onto it.
Yeah.
And you can set rules on that gateway device, but if it's sort of a, here you go, here's a box, and it does everything for you, then to set like an IP tables rule for them, they would then have to log into that box and then make all these changes.
Yeah, that's an interesting idea actually, to maybe provide that maybe that as a configuration thing for the administrator of the site.
Mm-hmm. That's what I was wondering. You're looking for some value-added services where it would make sense to charge for things, and that's certainly one of them. Is where some of the venues I've talked to, where they'd like to offer free service, they want to make sure their own systems. They might have one or two machines that are hooked up to the internet for credit card authentication, which is encrypted or whatever.
Well,
but you could partition off or support their local operations.
That would generally be done by who's ever installing it locally.
Mm-hmm.
They can do whatever they want, really. I mean, they have the software and it's open source, and that would be a service I would think someone would provide locally. I can see how we might enable that somehow, like make it easier for them.
Yeah, I mean, you could.
Right.
My immediate thought would be.
I can't see us charging
on your admin site where they're, editing their pages and whatnot. Mm-hmm. Say, shut off Kazaa port. Enter your SSH key here, and then it just SSH is in.
Yeah, and I
runs
think,
an IP table script, and then.
Yeah, and I think if nothing else, at least it's informed consent that the business owner knows. Oh, by the way, these are the following risk things to be aware of. If you ship it wide open, right? The answer is just be aware. These are the following things you need to think about, right? Or the alternative is to say, hey, we've thought about the following sets of things, and we're going to turn them off by default. And so you actually have to go back in and turn them on if you do in fact want them turned on.
Are you talking about like well-known ports on Linux?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
Because the box is essentially acting as a router.
Right.
Well, it's not Linux. I mean, it's filter rules.
Yeah, it's filter rules. Yeah.
Right. So like, if you have a neighbor that's doing Kazaa or something like that, you're going to get a nasty letter, pretty much guaranteed nowadays. I've gotten it from.
You mean like when you get the ICMP ping flood?
No, like you get a message from the DMCA.
DMCA or that letter, and then Comcast sends you a letter.
Yeah, and then your upstream provider sends you a letter, and they say, "Hey, you need to knock this off."
Yeah.
Well, usually the easiest ways, because if you may not know where they are, is to just filter that at the gateway.
That's an interesting idea.
It would be, since you have access to control that box,
right?
It might be an easy configuration option for you.
Any other questions? Well, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Did we make the case for free Wi-Fi?
Well, that's this month's show. Thanks for watching. And we're always looking for new stories and content, so please send us some content.
See you later.